Hello, everyone. Welcome. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for coming. We're going to be talking about accelerating time to science and focusing on urgent digital transformation. So welcome again and thank you. Feel free to put any questions in the chat and I'll try to keep a lookout for any questions that are coming up, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So first of all, welcome. And I'm pretty sure that everyone in this webinar likely knows better than even myself the rapidly changing nature of scientific research, right? It involves complex diagnostic lab equipment that's satisfying the needs of your scientists and all your other stakeholders. So it's a perpetual challenge for all of you to maintain the state of the art of your labs and your workflows. And regardless if it's a new lab build out, a relocation, or managing and optimizing existing space, your labs are under constant pressure to use space more efficiently, to be more agile in everything that you do, and you're being asked to do more with the space that you have. Your space is typically not going to be grown larger unless you're doing a large build out, but you're asked to do more with the space you have, and if it's not reducing your space, it's often capped, right? At that same time, you're being asked to increase your productivity, increase sustainability, and maintain the highest level of health and safety. And so while you're likely making significant investments in digital transformation of your labs, how you coordinate, manage, and optimize your space and workflows needs to be part of your digital transformation playbook, however you do it. So why change and why change now is what we're going to be talking about. You need to stay ahead. You need to be competitive in this marketplace, and importantly, accelerate scientific breakthroughs and ultimately save lives. So there's a critical element that's flying under the radar that's been overlooked for too long. And let's take a look at sort of what that is as part of our agenda. So again, we'll talk about why change now. We'll talk about that reason and what's going on, what that gap is in the marketplace. We'll talk about how to transform digitally and make other tools part of your transformation playbook, ultimately with the goal of getting to science faster. We'll do a quick call to action and then a Q&A. And during this time, we'll be doing a pretty good demonstration of what I'm the senior product manager for the lab design tool. We'll be covering that. But this is also an open invitation to discuss any kind of transformations that need to happen in your lab space relative to planning and workflows and layouts. So with that, let's take a look at what I call the digital transformation gap in lab design, layout, and optimization. So what you see here on the left side are current state of even billion-dollar pharma, biotech companies, diagnostic labs. They're all, when we speak to them, they're often using very general tools, whether it's graph paper, cardboard, PowerPoint, Visio, Sketch, to really do ongoing layout of their lab spaces. And of course, they're using architectural firms and third parties and architectural tools to do very larger build outs or major changes that require expertise that is not replaceable, right? You need architects to do this kind of work for you to really make sure everything's done right. But the two, really what you see here in the middle is sort of this gap where you have stuff on the left side that's highly inefficient, not collaborative, and you have stuff on the right that works really well and it's super important. You're never going to replace that completely. You need the expertise of architects, but do you really need them for all the small changes you're making on an ongoing basis? How do you empower you and your team to be more agile? And so when you look at what's going on here, you see the current methods are inefficient and costly. They can waste time and resources, delaying critical lab updates. You've got generic tools that make you jump through hoops and coordinating with your stakeholders. You've got architectural diagrams that are usually out of date the day that they're actually printed or even just rendered. And then your role in the process is relegated often with your stakeholders to do PDF markups or even 3D static renderings at best. So you've got some limited agility that's a result of that. And when it comes to agility in labs, you're struggling to scale and reconfigure spaces efficiently, especially when you're faced with unexpected demands or opportunities, and you're often having difficulty adjusting to new equipment, workflows, and research stages, and that delays critical science. So also in this gap that we're talking about here, there can be poor communication and misalignment. With any of these tools, it can be really difficult for you, or in particular, scientists and your stakeholders to actually understand the space, whether it's an optimization of a workflow, whether it's a relocation or a new build out, having them understand where their equipment's going to go, how it's going to fit, what's it going to feel like when they're in that space, or maybe you're training new people to go into that lab space that isn't even fully built out yet. How do you have better communication around that? But if you don't, with some of the tools that are out there or some of the processes that you're using, that can lead to misunderstandings, and it can result in costly rework and downtime, and potentially even underutilized areas. Then you've got your increased risk and downtime as well, which is, often hard for you and your stakeholders to visualize and predict and mitigate potential risks from a particular layout unless you can really walk through them. It's often not till you physically get in the space after you've laid it out that you realize what the potential risks might be. And that, again, leads to subsequent changes and increased downtime. And then the last couple really hindering collaboration. So there's in this process here on the left or the right side, the ability to do interactive, immersive collaboration can be difficult. It hinders collaboration with your stakeholders. You don't have sort of a living, breathing digital twin of your lab, of that particular space. It prevents quick ideas and prototyping and agility. And lastly, it can result, and often we've heard this from some big pharma companies as well in their space planning teams, it can reduce stakeholder trust. You have repeated mistakes, or you have delays, or it's very hard for them to understand from a 2D flat floor plan some of your recommendations, and they think they need more space, you think they need less space. And so having some consensus building tools are really important to increase the adoption and the trust, and eventually get you to a safe and efficient workflow. So these are some of the challenges, and I'm going to jump into a demonstration of one of the digital tools that we provide that allow big pharma companies, independent labs, and others to really deal with some of these issues. And we think this is a pretty big gap in the industry that's sort of, like I said, under the radar, and we're sort of bringing that to the fore. So I'm going to go ahead and share the lab design tool itself. So this is what it looks like. We only have a short time today, so I really want to be efficient with your time as best I can. So I just want to give you a sense of what's possible and focus on the value. There'll be opportunity for questions, but then there's also follow-up. If you'd like to follow up with us, happy to get into more detail. So this is the lab design tool itself. You've got various components over here with equipment. You've got the ability to draw walls and measuring tapes and so on. But the point here is it's easy to use, it's interactive, and it's collaborative. This is not an architectural tool. This is meant to empower you and all your stakeholders, and it's very easy to use. So what I've done is I've imported a floor plan here that you see in this particular space. And you can do that with any of your floor plans. You can design them without floor plans, but this is a use case that we often have with big pharma. They've got building space and they want to do some layouts and workflows and create a living, breathing version of this. So once I've imported it and scaled it, which takes about 2 minutes, I'm not going to do that process now. You'll see here what I've got. I've already done most of the work. This didn't take me very long, but I wanted to show you what this might look like. So you have this setting here where you can look at the opacity of the digital version of your lab space versus the overlay of the floor plan itself. So what I want to do here is show you kind of what the result is when you've done that. So these are just simple ways of drawing your space here. So I'll just give you a sense of, I just want to kind of remove some space here. We just go like this. You can see quickly, I'm just going to repeat that so you'll see how easy it is to do that. I'm going to bring the opacity back. And go back in, and all I do is go in here. I just wanted to show you briefly with this lab how easy it is to just design a space. There. Okay, so I just want to give you a sense of that, and now you can kind of see. But more importantly, what we're really talking about is the value. The value being quick and easy digital creation of your lab space. Now you've got a 2D floor plan, but you've got a real-life 3D floor plan as well. So now what you've got is the ability to look and feel and breathe and see this space in 3D very quickly, very easily. And I'll give you a sense of what that looks like. And I've just laid out some equipment in here just to give you an example. I'm starting with a larger space, and then we're going to drop back and learn about the tool with a smaller space. But I wanted to give you a sense. We have customers in different regions around the globe that are using this for very large, multi-100,000 square foot spaces and more. But I just wanted to give you a sense of what that experience that we're trying to build here and what it looks like. And the point being that this is a collaborative tool, it's an empowering tool, and it's not meant to be an architectural diagram or replace architectural diagrams. It will work hand in hand, but allow you to have better communication with your architects and better communication and collaboration with your stakeholders. So let's go to a simpler lab file that we can use to go through some of the features and value of the tool itself. And this is one that we put together briefly with a client. So here you have a space where we've got some furniture laid out, and I could just show you how quick and easy it is. These desks are resizable. These objects in here, every single piece of instrument and object is smart. There's collision detection, which will tell you when things are bumping up against each other. Very carefully, you have clearance settings that you can do in each of these objects. I can force resizing of them to make them any size that I want as I need to. And importantly, what you're seeing is a real-time 3D view as you're designing the space. So that's super important. So as I'm doing stuff, you can see things changing in real time, both in 3D and 2D simultaneously. And the objects themselves, as I call them, smart objects, they know whether they can sit on a desk. I can put this on a desk, I can rotate it so the front is placed here, and you'll see that it's now sitting on that desk. But I can also just put it on the floor and it will sit on the floor if that's what we want it to do. And I can have control of things and stack things onto the desk that need to be there very easily. So I don't have to put a lot of effort into that. So drawing the walls, the space is very easy, navigating the space. And importantly, I can dive into that space. So I just put a few things of furniture here, kind of laid it out the way this particular lab initially had sent it to us. And I want to give you a sense of what we did afterwards, taking that space there and looking at their asset list and some of the layout. We worked with them to put, and again, we're not lab designers. I just want to make that clear. But I just wanted to say that now here's a different space we can walk into, and I'll show you what we did. I do see a question, and it says, when using an object with a hinge that opens, for example, a freezer, it will show the area at the door when it opens. Fantastic question. So for the doors, yes, it absolutely shows that. For the and in fact, when I dive into that space, you'll actually see we have control over that space as well. And I can even do take a look at that space that's taken up by these hinges here. Having said that, for the actual doors, some of the 3D models have the space and the clearances laid out for the door swings. Others do not. But actually, in our next quarter release, we actually have a specific component we're adding to this under these objects here, where I can add any hinge in front of any object that I want. So to answer your question, today, not for every object, but we will have it for every object in the next quarter that I can attach to. I can basically take one of these door swings here that I can put on a wall and attach to a wall. I'll be able to put it easily in front of any piece of equipment and make it the right size. But that feature doesn't exist at this exact time. Fantastic question. So with that, where I was going here was that we were laying out all this equipment in this lab, and I just want to give you an immersive sense of what this turns out to be. So now that we've got the layout here, and we've put our assets where we want them, and you can take this tool now and interactively collaborate with your stakeholders and get a sense of the space around here and what's actually happening. We've got generic objects here, which I'll explain in a moment. But we also have 3D models of very specific equipment that might be in your lab as well. Do a back view here. And I'll show you how this was sort of created. So essentially, here's some refrigerators here, and I can just delete those. And I'll take one in particular, I can edit it, and you can put clearances here. Now, again, since we don't have the door swings right now, we do have the ability to put clearances in the front that would represent the door swings. But again, we'll have the door swing component in addition to that. Also for the back, I could put clearances in the back of this item. And because these are small, smart objects, you'll see that now when I snap to the wall, it includes that clearance that we just put here. So I can map that all the time. I see another question. Can you place objects under the lab benches? Absolutely. So if I go here, we'll take this chair, for instance, but you can do it other ways. And if I go here to edit, and I can say the asset can stack on tables, If I tell it it can stack on tables, then if I put it here, you're going to see it actually sitting on top of the table. I did that on purpose. So if I edit that, I say that off, and I turn collision detection off. Collision detection is when it turns red. So now I can shove it under the table, and you'll go here, and you'll see now that chair is sitting under the table. And if you want, I could take a fridge, just to give you another good example here. So we could take a small refrigerator, put it here, turn it around, put it on top of the table, and you'll see it now sitting on top of the table. And if I tell it to not sit on the table, turn collision detection off, bam, now that refrigerator is now sitting under the bench. And you'll see that right here. I'll just kind of bring you over so you can see that result. So there you go. And of course, we can look at the space and what's going on there. So thank you for that question. That was excellent. So as you see here, we've laid out lots of equipment. We have lots of equipment that's sitting on the table as well to give people a sense of the operating space and where they're using it. This becomes really important for labs as well, to be able to see how much space there is just on the table, let alone that walking space within that actual place itself. Now, what I want to do is show you a couple different components here. Also, one of the things to note is that if I select an item and it's not going to fit through a door, that door will turn red. So that's helpful as well. We have workflow lines here that I can place at any point into this space here, like that. And this one in particular gives you a sense, you can use that for directionals. There's the ability to do video fly-throughs as well, and I can set this up any way that I want, any camera angles that I want, and essentially fly through the space. And I can use that to do different fly-throughs, no matter how large the space is. I can export this as videos and share it with my stakeholders. I can create different versions of this. This could be used for training. It could also be used for showing executive stakeholders about particular new floor plans that you're looking at. And I can do multiple versions of every single proposal. So for instance, I've got this lab here, but maybe there's 2 or 3 different versions of what we're trying to propose. And so you can do a sort of a before and after, or you can do proposal 1, 2, and 3. So in this version, maybe you've got other things going on here. Maybe you don't have this particular station here. And I'm not going to draw a whole new lab, but you can see you can flip between the different 2 and have discussions, talk about the workflows of each and where the scientists are going to be. Most importantly, you can collaborate with the scientists with this tool. That's what it's specifically for, as well as your very detailed space planning and coordination that you're doing. I'm just giving you a sense again of how that looks. Now, what I can also show you is that we have, we're not going, so this is the list of instruments, and there's quite a large number of different instruments that are in here, some generic, some very specifically branded. As you are working with these, you'll find that you've got quite a lot to choose from. At the same time, we'll never have every single instrument that's most important to you all the time. So we have what's called these generic assets here. So I can take a generic asset, I can place it into this space, I can make it any size that I want very easily. I can also very easily just edit that and specifically put in the dimensions that I want it to be. I can set the clearances the way I want it to be, set the elevation, and importantly, I can upload an image. And when I do that, I can put an image. You might have images of equipment you're looking to purchase. You might have images of equipment that are already in your lab. And actually, this runs on an iPad, so you can do that through the iPad and literally take pictures and instantly put them onto this generic object. And I'm not going to do all that now, given the time, but what I'll show you is that that's exactly what we have in the lab right here. So for instance, if you look at this right here, this cabinet right here is a real 3D model. However, this thermo refrigerator and this unit right here, these are both just images that are on generic objects or boxes. And the idea is that it'll give you and the scientists an understanding of the space that's needed, but it's not necessarily a 3D model. And that's sometimes that's needed, and we can certainly add those in over time, depending on what your requirements are. So I wanted to give you a sense of that as well. We also have, there's things like measuring tapes, so you can get pretty detailed about particular measuring situations, which are really important, and you can leave those there in the design if needed, so you can always get back to them. And you can take snapshots, and importantly, you can also share these view only and editable, but in many cases, view only with your team. And you can all work collaboratively on this design together. Sorry, I see another question here from Edward. Can you attach information to objects like asset numbers, serial numbers? Great question. And be able to export this as CSV. Yes, and can this also note different spaces, lab room numbers on a larger floor plan? Yes, so yes to all that. Fantastic set of questions. So you were way ahead of me. So if I go into this asset right here, which is 6-foot BSC, you'll see I have metadata right here. So in this metadata, I can add model numbers, asset tags, and then also I can put in the types of utilities that this requires. Maybe that it has 2 power outlets, it requires air, gas, and chilled water, and I can apply that. And then that's applied to that particular instrument. It will save that. I could put an asset tag here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there are ways to search for that as well. So I can do searching for different assets. So here's a metadata search, and I can search for model number, asset tags, and other things that will find it for me both in 3D and in 2D. And importantly, I also have the ability to, I can export this asset list to a file, to a CSV file, as you mentioned in your question there. Also, I can import them. So I have the ability, so all these generic objects here, you do not have to make these manually, as you saw me do here. If you have an asset list of 5 or 100 or even 1,000 objects, all with names, all with dimensions, all with some of the metadata and asset tags, you can instantly import that into this tool right here, and they'll automatically be loaded. And I might have one ready here. I'm going to look and see if I do, because that's a pretty great question, and I want to address that. Let's see if I actually have that one ready for you. Just going to look here. And I don't believe I have one ready to show you, but we will, but anyway, to answer your question, you absolutely can do that. Let me just look here. I think I found one. Here we go. Import assets. And there we go. I'm now importing. It just successfully imported 30 generic objects. And now it brought me to this user added palette over here. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of objects, analytical balances, centrifuges, column managers, incubators, and so on. And these are all now part of this palette that you see here. And that was all done instantly. And they all have the exact dimensions, they have names on them, and the metadata could be in there as well, and whatever else you need. So I'm just watching the time because I want to leave enough time for questions. So I'm going to wrap up in a moment. There's a lot going on here, but I want to be careful not to just focus on features and functions. I want to focus on the value around collaboration. We have tools in here to create visual workflows. I don't have enough time to create them for you, but I can show you. It's super easy for you to create any visual workflow through your lab, and it would look something like this, where I can essentially I want to start my workflow here, and there are 3 instruments in that workflow, and it will bring you to each one. And you can have instructions and other documents all linked to here as well. And then I'll go to the next step in my workflow and the next step in my workflow. And this is all customizable and easy to create by yourself. And you can share these workflows with your stakeholders and have them, but they're all embedded here in the lab space. I can also do process simulation, where essentially I've gone through and I've said, okay, I've got process 1, I've got process 2, just as an example. This can process 250 units or batch size in 30 seconds. This one can do it 500 in 45 seconds. This can get very complicated in a good way to really mimic the simulation of your lab. You can have multiple places that are pointing to the same processes and back and forth to represent what's going on in your lab. Then you can run that simulation in different versions of this simulation to see what might be the best in terms of how this all processes and where the bottlenecks might be. Super important to understand that that capability is there as well, and that's being used by a lot of our customers. So in the interest in time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share back to sort of a closing slide here so we can all talk through this. And I want to leave some time for any more questions. Great. So we did the demonstration. And so as a wrap up today, I want to bring everything full circle. So it's all about maintaining the state of art of your labs and your workflows. And that's really no small feat, but it's absolutely essential to driving the productivity and staying competitive. One of the largest clinical and diagnostic labs in the world is using the lab design tool, and they're saving millions of dollars transforming how they optimize their workflows. They're improving their lean processes and reducing time and labor costs. They've actually achieved 100% success rate in new workflow layouts, getting it right the first time to achieve quick consensus with all their stakeholders before ever changing anything physically. Pharma companies like Eli Lilly are using the lab design tool for big relocation projects like they're doing in Boston. And their scientists had actually expressed concern around the smaller space they were given to relocate to. And their space planners and lab operations people are using the lab design tool to help them see and literally feel how it will be to move over to that new space, dramatically reducing the time and effort to reach consensus, increasing trust, and literally reducing their anxiety, given that they didn't feel like they had enough space, and now learning that they do once they're able to virtually go through that space. Vertex Pharma in Boston told us their lab design tool enabled them to complete a full optimization in one of their lab spaces in 3 hours. And that exact same task they had done without the tool a year earlier had taken them 3 weeks or more and used quite a lot of time of their scientists who really have better things to be doing. So with that, regardless of how and what tool you choose to use for your digital transformation in this area, don't let this gap stay under the radar. I'd be happy to recreate an immersive demonstration of your lab anytime, just reach out. But know that we're here to support you on that journey to a more optimized and modern lab, and truly, really the goal of saving lives. So regardless of your interest, if you're interested in the lab design tool or not, please reach out. Thank you all for your time today, and we have just a few minutes left for any questions, if there are any. I'd love to take them. Wonderful. So reach out anytime, and if there are no other questions, I just want, yep, thank you very much. You're very, very welcome, and I hope you found it enjoyable. Thanks for that comment. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care now. Bye-bye.